Good evening from New York. Not merely spreading lies, but convincing a dissatisfied portion of the population to believe their propaganda and to act out in anger. Our fifth story in the countdown: when Hamas does it or Hezbollah does it, it is called terrorism. Why should Republican lawmakers and the AstroTurf groups organizing on behalf of the healthcare industry be viewed any differently? Especially now that far too many Tea Party protesters are comparing President Obama and healthcare reform to Hitler and the Holocaust. And when a former Republican vice presidential candidate actually says out loud that the reform bill will create a death panel with the authority to kill her children. Grassroots groups may be fake, but the anger of the Americans lashing out at healthcare events across the country now dangerously real. The Tampa town hall featuring Congresswoman Kathy Castor yesterday more closely resembling a WWE night than a policy discussion. The protesters not interested in hearing any voices other than their own. Outside that town hall, echoes of McCain-Palin rallies of the last year, including a cry of Heil Hitler. In Detroit, the president mocked by some as Hitler. The signs doing the talking outside the meeting held by Congressman John Dingell. In Denver, a young man from Wasilla, Alaska, coincidentally enough, wearing a T-shirt that said, "Hitler gave great speeches too," picketing the town hall event held by Speaker Pelosi. In St. Louis, 6 people arrested last night outside the town hall held by Congressman Russ Carnahan. 2 for assault, 1 for resisting arrest, 3 for disturbing the peace. The protesters yelling about political oppression after not having been allowed inside, the doors of the venue having been closed once it had reached capacity because of what we call the fire code. As we know, the anger and the ideas of the Tea Party protesters did not form organically nor spontaneously. Outside Congressman Chris Murphy's town hall meeting in Connecticut, nothing up his sleeve. That guy not even bothering to hide his apparent affiliation with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Actually not bright enough to wear a different shirt to the rally. At the town hall yesterday held by Steve Kagan, the congressman in Kewanee, Wisconsin, that reported protester, Heather Blish, introduced herself as just a mom from a few blocks away, claiming not to be affiliated with the, say, Republican Party.
No, I was not influenced. I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I have not paid my dues to the Republican Party for 2 years. I left the party.
Except the LinkedIn page for Heather Blish reveals that she was vice chair of the Republican Party in Kewanee County until last year. She also worked on the campaign of the Republican who ran against that Congressman, Kagan, last fall. That the health care bill would purportedly mandate the euthanasia of America's elderly, one of the most pernicious lies now taking hold. At a bus tour event in Pueblo, Colorado last night, organized by the corporate lobbying group Americans for Prosperity, a speaker from that group among those disseminating the euthanasia lie before comparing Democratic health care reform to some of the most despotic regimes in world history.
Stalin in the 1920s issued about 20 million end-of-life orders for his fellow Russians. Pol Pot did it during the Vietnam War. He issued about 2 million end-of-life orders. It's being done in Africa today. Mugabe is doing it every day. Adolf Hitler issued 6 million end-of-life orders. He called his program the final solution. I kind of wonder what we're going to call ours.
And I kind of wonder if you're a meth addict. Time now to call in our own Jonathan Alter, senior editor at Newsweek magazine. Thanks for coming in again, John.
Hi, Keith.
That's one of the lies we did not get to last night. This absurd idea of euthanasia, forced euthanasia of the elderly under this proposed plan. Today, Governor Palin went in the opposite direction. Her Facebook page reads, "The America I know and love is not one in which my parents or my baby with Down syndrome will have to stand in front of Obama's, quote, death panel, unquote," making it sound as if there were such a thing, "so his bureaucrats can decide based on a subjective judgment of their level of productivity in society whether they are worthy of health care. Such a system is downright evil." I would here and again suggest the governor might be stoned, but that would be an insult to stoners. How did this horror, this idea that anybody, and I mean anybody, Republicans, Democrats, independents, or the insane people would actually propose legislation that even touched euthanasia, forced euthanasia, how did this get any kind of hold rather than the people who, like that man, not being chased off the stage by the people who were listening to him?
Well, let's start with what's actually in these bills.
Yeah.
And if you go to the page that references this, which of course none of these critics, including Governor Palin, want to do because it would destroy their despicable lies, it said something very, very simple, which is that when you get to an end-of-life decision, that Medicare will reimburse your doctor to have the conversation that every elderly person or grievously ill person and their families should have to make these very tough decisions. And having the consultation of a medical professional is helpful. That doesn't say that anything about advancing the end of life,
that
much less euthanasia.
Right, that conversation can be, I want you to keep pumping me full of drugs until there's none left in the
Absolutely, that's the family's
Keep pumping
choice.
my chest until I've been dead 6 weeks.
And there are families for whom that's the choice, and that's fine.
And
but the idea
that will be covered now.
Right, it's now covered to just have this conversation that everybody needs to have with medical professionals. I had it with some when my mother was sick before she died last fall. I think the whole audience.
I had that conversation this year. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The whole audience understands. Usually doctors do it without being reimbursed, but this is a way of providing some reimbursement for them and allowing people to make more sensible choices that work the best for their families. So the Republicans took that. Not all the Republicans, just the despicable ones. They took that and they decided to demagogue it in the most horrifying way, playing on the fears of elderly people, reaching back to these ludicrous historical comparisons, and really creating what can only be described as an uncivilized debate.
Well, what was the whole thing for the last 2 or 3 cycles from the Republicans was, if you vote Democratic, you'll die because of terrorism. That one seems to have waned, so now it's if you vote Democratic, you'll die because of health care reform. But which begs this larger question. The op-ed in the Washington Post today by Stephen Pearlstein. If the Republican Party and others who are actively shilling for the healthcare industry, knowingly inciting a dissatisfied portion of the American public towards violence with propaganda, knowing that it's never going to be vetted or checked by people who want to believe this, who need an excuse to get riled up and perhaps actually violently angry, how is that different than what Hamas or Hezbollah does? How are these people not political terrorists?
Well, I don't like comparing people to terrorists or Nazis. That's what the other side's doing right now, comparing Obama to being a Nazi. But I would say that this is incitement, and that the history of incitement is a very dangerous one. Where it starts in societies that are decaying or headed toward political violence starts with hate speech, then it moves to destroying property, then it moves to killing people. That's the progression in these societies that are going down the wrong path. Not killing people through some imagined bill in Congress, but inciting people to violence, which is where this does lead. So I think it's a scary situation right now. It's one that doesn't help the Republicans, because what it does is just discredit those honest citizens who are honestly concerned about the health care bill and turning up at these town meetings and asking perfectly legitimate questions of their elected representatives. It throws all of them in with these kooks, which does not lend itself to a civilized debate or any kind of real fair exchange of views. So Democratic members of Congress, they need to be clear that this bill should fix what's wrong with our system, and that we should have a civilized argument about it, not this kind of name calling that we've been seeing.
Jonathan Alter of MSNBC and Newsweek, thank you again for coming in. Have a good weekend.